There's a couple things that happened, guys, that are super important.
Are they?
Yeah.
Which ones?
Rick and fucking Morty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're back.
Sadly,
back
I
in
missed
business.
it.
Who gives a shit? You saw the first episode, though. We sent you the first episode.
Yeah,
let's unpack the first episode, and we'll catch up on episode 2.
Yeah.
Episode 1, where it opens up with him and Shoney's.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And then he tells Jerry to fold himself.
Yes, 12 times. But he can only accomplish. I've watched that like 5 times.
Yeah, it's a fantastic episode.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's just weird. I was just realizing this the other day. I think I've had this level of like just unreasonable excitement for a new show or even, frankly, a new movie in a couple of years. I don't know. It's something where it's just like the show was so perfect. The season 2 was so amazing, and we had to wait so long for season 3 that I find myself like in the last couple months seeing a promo material or something for Rick and Morty, and just that kind of almost panic level anticipation, like when you're a kid and you're like, when is Christmas coming? Why isn't it here yet? Why is it 3 weeks away? Like that right. level is what I began to feel. And so it's now that we're actually here, and obviously the first episode premiered a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And so on April Fool's Day. And now we're getting back into the season, but I'm just so fucking happy. I can say we don't have to get fully into episode 2 now, but the first 2 episodes have been so incredibly strong.
Yeah, they are top notch. Like
just
as good as anything from season 1.
So
season 2.
dense and so good and character driven, and it's just excellent stuff.
I mean, the fact that the ending of episode 1 is now the entirety of episode 2, like the divorce stuff,
right? So like
really great.
It seems like the storyline surrounding season 3, at least to begin with, is going to be the divorce.
Yes.
And how the kids deal with it.
And how the kids deal with the divorce,
how Rick deals with
it.
and
I love that Rick is even admitting, he's like, I'm also not handling this well.
Right? Yeah. But anyway, it's first episode was fucking fantastic, and I do like how elaborate. Well, originally what was episode 1 was, or a lot of the story of episode 1, him breaking out of prison, was supposed to be the final episode of the previous season. And they weren't going to end with him going into prison and just using it as a cliffhanger, but then they decided at a certain point that I guess they just did not have the production real estate time-wise. They said just to come to do a whole other episode, and they were behind or something like that. I forget what. So they just decided, fuck it, we'll end it with him just what was supposed to be the second to last episode, which is him going into prison, cliffhanger, and then just move on. So they did that, which was, and but I don't know, just the whole. I just love. The other thing that we haven't talked about is that they brought the Szechuan sauce thing in episode 1, where he makes reference to the Szechuan sauce that has become like apparently an internet phenomenon since then. Wherein So anyway, for the uninitiated, Rick is apparently pursuing the the Mulan tie-in product, the Szechuan sauce that McDonald's released for a limited time in conjunction with the release of the film Mulan.
And because of this, at one point in the past couple months, like packets of Szechuan sauce have sold for in the thousands
of dollars,
which is the stupidest, silliest thing in the world. However, McDonald's sent Justin Roiland a big old tub of Szechuan
64
sauce.
ounce
Holy shit.
Jug of Szechuan sauce, and like a really cute note as well,
with like a really silly little note. Also, the packaging of the Szechuan sauce also has Rick and Morty references.
Oh, interesting.
And so, I think there's something to be said about pop culture affecting the real world, but this is by far the most inane way that's ever happened. Like, it is.
I'm glad that's where you went with that. I was thinking you were gonna say something. No, that's good. That's good.
It's one guy making one stoner's joke about sauce for chicken McNuggets.
It's the thing. It's the thing that happens. Like, exactly. Like when you're hanging out in a room and they're hanging out in the writers' room. It's like, fuck, man, remember that Szechuan sauce? Let's see if we can make them make it again.
Yeah.
Like, and that's really, I mean, you have to believe that that's the thing. It's like, how far will they go? Let's find out.
So that first episode does such a good job of season 3. Does such a good job of characterizing Rick.
Yeah.
And that's something that doesn't happen in so many shows. Like his the way he fucking breaks out of that jail is 100% Rick Sanchez.
Yes.
And just if you had to describe who he is to people, you could just walk them through his steps of how he achieved this.
Effortlessly beaming himself into different brains, and then as soon as he does, just stepping out by saying, "I gotta go take a shit." Every time is so fucking good.
Yeah, it's like it's just a snowball effect from one small action into worse and worsening.
Well, the other thing, the one thing I really like about it is also just the notion that what they do in the episode is they spend a large portion of the episode diving into a backstory for Rick, like a tragic backstory that's supposed to define who he is and all of that, of having had a wife who then was killed by the other Ricks, and so he's at odds with them as a result, and does all of that only to then, spoilers everybody, reveal at the end of that episode that entire backstory was just a total invention by Rick so that he could trap government officials and hack his way out of the prison, blah, 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 blah. But I think the bigger thing here is what I like is the statement, and I think that Dan Harmon has kind of confirmed that in interviews since, that it's really kind of just a rebuke of the whole notion that a character is defined by some kind of silly backstory or some tragic little nugget. And that's something, and this will kind of transition us if we end up talking about Game of Thrones, that I think is one of the things that is manifest throughout even the George R.R. Martin Game of Thrones episodes and everything, that is just really annoying, is that every character... It's like a character does not necessarily have to be defined in how they act and their attitudes by certain events in the past that are there to create a causal relationship, thereby justifying their values, thereby justifying their methodology, thereby justifying all of their shit. And Game of Thrones, which is this long-form storytelling, seems to only understand character in that way. Right. This is where you get into the wonderful phenomenon, which I would love to one day, if I had a second person that had more time than I do in my life, do a supercut of every time in Game of Thrones when a character has to make a decision or is asked why they're doing something or whatever, and immediately launches into an anecdote about their childhood. This happens. There was a period where this would happen 5 times an episode, where they would say, it's like, "But why have you turned against the queen?" When I was a boy, and they'll start walking. I remember my father once told me that blah, 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 blah. And then at the end of it, it's like, and then so from this anecdote from your past, you distilled the lesson that you always have to look out for yourself, and that's why you're doing the thing. Okay, I get it. And then the very next scene, they would see someone would be pouring wine, and then Cersei would say, "When I was a girl, I remember I had a doll, and that doll was full of birthday boobs, And I was just like, and then that doll was taken from me, and that the doll was, and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, all right, yeah, I get it. All right, there was a thing that happened in your past, and from that story, you distilled a lesson that now affects your method of how you do things and your values. I get it. And then in the next scene, Tyrion doing something. When I was a boy, my father put me in a barrel full of shit and then rubbed it all over my face. And again, it's just like, it is one way of telling stories. It's fine, but it was like so abused in Game of Thrones to where every justification for every action was always had to be psychologically grounded to some sort of event that fatalistically turned that person towards being the person they are. And what I love about this first episode of Rick and Morty is it gives you exactly that. Like, here's why he's why is he a loner? Why is he a nihilist? Why is he all of these things? Why is he at odds with the other Ricks? And it ties it all up in something that in any other show would be perfectly good enough to justify. And then it takes that and throws it away and says, yeah, that whole idea of how to tell stories is fucking stupid. Rick is Rick. Rick is the way he is. And if you want to see what his values are and why he does, just watch him now. Right. Watch him do the things he's doing, and you will learn who he is and why he does the things that he does. So, and that's my favorite fucking thing about that episode.
100% agreed. And episode 2 continues that masterfully. Yes. And I guess we can talk about episode 2 next week. But